ANZ is now facing a number of investigations. Could you break down the specific allegations facing the bank?
It really comes down to two, and I'd really like to caution you, at this stage we're still going off a bit of hearsay, but what we know is there seems to be a lot of media reports around some potential vulnerabilities in the April 2023 $14 billion government bond issuance, where ANZ effectively was the pricing agent. And the second one, more recently, it's been reported that perhaps there were even some incorrect volumes reported to AFM about the size of ANZ in the market. But I'd really like to stress at this point we're going off very limited disclosures from ANZ, which is like a 3-line announcement just confirming that ASIC were investigating it, but reportedly APRA are looking at it, and it really is stuff that we're seeing in the media at the moment that the market seems to be responding to.
What is the consequence of the allegations alleged to have taken place here? Could they have seen the price of bond futures being pushed down?
Well, certainly on the day the transaction went through, we can see that there were a few contracts that were executed 5 basis points kind of different to the market over the rest of the day. That just happens to be the period where $14 billion of government bonds were issued, which means that the pricing of those particular bonds sees taxpayers paying an extra 5 basis points. Now, that ends up probably being quite a material number over the 10-year life of the bond, but we should be thinking somewhere in the kind of like $40 million extra interest costs over the life of the bond, which is about 10 years.
A spokesman for the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, says the allegations are disturbing. It has been reported that ANZ has been excluded from government debt issuances after the bond trade in question. What does that say to you about how quickly this issue was identified?
Well, and once again, we're just going off media reports here, but the Treasurer reportedly knew about this when he actually approved the Suncorp Bank deal. But to me, it is actually quite significant that ANZ, that were perceived to be a major force in the bond market, haven't done a government bond issuance since. But the other thing is the overstatement of their market participation, if the numbers are true, means in fact they weren't number 1 in the bond market. They were somewhere north of number 10. And to me, it is quite significant that we don't see them participating in those bonds. So whether that means that perhaps the government doesn't trust them, I suppose we'll have to wait and see whether more comments, but it has been noticeable that they seem to have been excluded from those transactions.
How big a problem is this now for ANZ?
There is no precedent for this. The 90-day bank bill rate rigging cases in 2016 triggered about a $50 million fine for ANZ, Combank and NAB separately. But when we have a look at this transaction, or this purported transaction, is a long way after the Financial Services Royal Commission. But really the consequences of it come down to the fact that CBA, NAB and Westpac have all had CEOs and chairs depart for matters that looked inadvertent. So it's not that that they shouldn't have known about these issues, but they clearly were accidental. Whereas some of the media reports, and we'll have to wait and see whether this is correct or not, are implying a deliberate manipulation, and that is an order of magnitude different to an accidental error. So, as I say, other banks have lost CEOs and chairs over this same issue, but certainly even the internal emails that are now being reported in the press from ANZ talk about those responsible. There will be consequences for them. But, accountability, this could have a profound impact on ANZ going forward.
Is this a crisis for the CEO, Shayne Elliott?
Personally, I think it is. They've got a lot on their. They've got a lot of work to do on the moment on integrating the Suncorp Bank acquisition, and this is an unnecessary distraction. If we have a look at Westpac after their enforceable undertaking, it was like 4 or 5 years where they just couldn't achieve what they would like to do because they were always constantly trying to fix the bank, and it's really that distraction that is more important than any fine or any regulatory capital impost, because it ends up being quite a substantial amount of costs that you spend basically trying to fix the bank as opposed to operate the bank in a more efficient environment.
There's been a lot of speculation about Shayne Elliott's successor, given that he has been in the job for 8 years. Could these recent allegations mean now that an outsider is more likely to be picked for that role?
Well, normally a CEO tenure in Australia is probably about 10 years, but certainly we are seeing increased commentary. I'd always thought that the board seemed so invested in the ANZ strategy that you were most likely to get an internal successor. But perhaps this really does, totally change this. If we have a look at the other banks, Westpac had gone with the internal successor route. National Australia Bank rebounded quite strongly when they went with an external CEO, a guy called Ross McEwen. CommBank went with an internal successor in Matt Comyn, and CommBank seems to have gone from strength to strength. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly it does have profound impact for the operating costs and the whole management team at ANZ. So I suppose I'm not trying to dodge the question, but we'll have to wait and see. But normally 10 years, Shayne is 8 into a normal 10-year tenure, and this is a distraction at the end of his cycle as CEO.
We've been discussing allegations in relation to bond trading manipulation. Does this issue, though, also highlight the possible existence of wider cultural issues within the bank that warrant further examination?
Well, this is the whole thing. If we go back right to the beginning, 2017, the Austrac problems at CommBank, I think, largely triggered the Royal Commission. And the Royal Commission revealed all kinds of stuff that no one had anticipated, far beyond the initial remit. But as I say, in ANZ's case, if this is true, you really don't know what has been going on. Now, to give you a small example, ANZ had an ESG briefing on the 27th of June. Notwithstanding the fact that this issue was kind of simmering, it didn't seem to be mentioned during that briefing. And given that ESG, the G is for governance, it is quite surprising that it wasn't addressed at that briefing. Now, perhaps that may well be that they're not in a position to actually say, or they don't know, but certainly there is kind of like an information void at the moment from ANZ because we haven't got too much commentary apart from a very brief stock exchange announcement. Very, very brief, just confirming that ASIC are investigating.
Brian Johnson, thank you for your time.
Thank you.